working people are suffering. There's a barrage of attacks on the working people of Zimbabwe. The price of fuel has been increased by more than 60% to $2.20 a liter, which has now become the most expensive fuel in sub-Saharan Africa. This is notwithstanding that we had over 3 million liters of fuel already stocked at Feruka and Masasa, so that the recent fuel increases are nothing but speculative, punitive measures against the people of Zimbabwe. We could and should have benefited from the buffer, the reserve buffer of fuel that we already have in the country. So the irony is that countries like Zambia, whose fuel actually passed through Zimbabwe, now have fuel that is considerably less than that of Zimbabwe. As I'm talking to you right now, nurses are on strike because of poor and paltry wages. Teachers have given notice of to go on strike in terms of the Labour Act because of poor salaries. Business people, contractors, they are all crying because government has declared that all services and products will now be paid in a local currency, yet they sourced their commodities, they sourced their costs in US dollars. So the economy faces a massive slowdown, a period of stagflation, a crisis of underaccumulation, thanks to corruption, thanks to mismanagement. But the ordinary Wananji, the ordinary citizen, faces a serious clampdown. Since the publication of Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 of 2026, we have seen a massive clampdown against the citizens of Zimbabwe and closure of all political space. This is despite the fact that Zimbabweans have a right to freedom of expression codified in the Constitution, have a right to freedom of assembly, have a right to freedom of association, and have a right to express a political view that is codified in Section 67 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. We in the CDF have notified the police of at least 20 meetings, all of which have been turned down for one reason or the other by the Zimbabwe Republic Police. Yet ZANU-PF daily has at least 4-5 public gatherings, public hearings, rallies in support of Constitutional Amendment number 3 of 2026. Even private meetings of organizations such as the CDF have been proscribed and banned. And only last week on Saturday, I was arrested with 3 others, including Morgan Ngube in Mutare, for having a private meeting at a private residence. And our crime was simply to talk about the Constitution. There's been violence unleashed against the activists. Professor Lovemo Maduku was heavily assaulted only 3 weeks ago. Here they've barricaded the offices of our law firm. They've beaten up people, including Confidence Chipangura, an employee of the CDF. So it is clear that ZANU-PF are pushing to create a manufactured consensus, a manufactured consent in favor of Constitutional Amendment number 3 of 2026. But it is clear beyond a shadow of doubt that the people of Zimbabwe are totally against this bill. It doesn't matter whether you are in Ngai, it doesn't matter whether you are in Cholocho, it doesn't matter whether you are in Odzani, it doesn't matter whether you are in Kanyembo, it doesn't matter whether you're in Muzarabani, it doesn't matter whether you're in Otito, it doesn't matter whether you're in Chendambuya. People of Zimbabwe are against the Constitutional Amendment number 3 of 2026. I've traveled the length and breadth of this country. I've spoken to thousands of Zimbabweans in bus stop, in churches. People are against this constitutional bill. And we're very grateful to the clear stance that has been taken by Labour against this bill. We're very grateful to the clear stance that has been taken by the church against this bill. And we laud and applaud the great work that, for instance, the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, the Catholic bishops are doing in opposing this Amatia, this act of evil. And wherever we go, people are very clear that they want to choose their president, that they can't be 17 million people can't be disenfranchised in favor of 280 members of parliament. Vanhu vada kuvhotera president wavo, saka vari kuramba china yekunzi parliament ndoinenge yakuchuza president. Vanhu havasi kuda kuti election cycle iite 7 years. Vanhu vada kuramba election cycle iri pa 5 years. Havasi kunzwisisa chikonzero chekuti election cycle yapa 7 years. Vanhu vari kuti iwe muconstitution musection 92, musection 95, musection 143, musection 158 takataura kuti term of office yapresident ndeye 5 years. So any extension will require a referendum. So vanhu vari kutoda mareferendum edu maviri. We want our 2 referendums. One to remove the entrenched term limit provision, and one to make the removal benefit the incumbent. So the overwhelming cry against this bill is that we want a referendum. We want a referendum. If you choose to go this path, people are very clear that they don't want the gender commission to be removed. People are very clear that they don't want the return of Tobayo Mbede. They don't want the voter registration to be done by a functionary and not the Zimbabwe Election Commission. People are very clear that they don't want the process of delimitation to be done by the Zimbabwe election by a committee other than the Zimbabwe Election Commission. So it is clear to us that we are in the process of a slow coup. Right now we're in this process of a slow coup. And this is the 3rd coup in under 20 years. We saw the coup in 2008, which prevented Morgan Tsvangirai from being the president of this country. We saw the physical coup of November 2017. Now we are in the middle of another slow coup that is being done through the guise of Ammendment number 3 of 2026. We note with regret that the process of public consultations around the constitution led by Parliament is commencing on Monday, the 30th of March 2026, and will go to the 31st and to the 1st of April. We are concerned that only 68 meetings have been set aside throughout the country for this process. Yet the COPAC process that gave rise to the this constitution that we are defending, yet over 4,500 consultations, including a referendum that was held in March of 2013. So by forcing people into small meetings in provinces, Harare, for instance, with a population of 3 million people, is going to be squeezed in 2 meetings. One that will start at 10 a.m. in Epworth, and at 2 p.m., another one would then take place at the city sports center. So in less than 4 hours, Parliament thinks it will have listened and collected the views of Hararians. It's a joke, unfortunately, one that is not funny, one that is toxic. Bulawayo originally, the whole of Bulawayo, over 1 million people, had one place of consultation. Huge provinces like Mashonaland West has 6 places of consultation. Huge provinces such as Masvingo has 6-7 places of consultation. So we demand, and there's a reason why Section 328 of the Constitution obliges a constitutional bill, any bill seeking to amend the Constitution, to lie in state for 90 days. And there's a reason why in express terms, Section 328 says that Parliament must immediately embark on a process of public consultation. So the consultation of a constitutional bill is 90 days. Is 90 days. It begins, and it ought to have begun on the 16th of February 2026. And the ideal situation should have been that at a minimum, there should have been a minimum of 10 different places in a constituencies that will run for at least 10 days so that people can give evidence adequately and freely. Despite these challenges, we urge Zimbabweans to go and give their evidence. Tiri kukumbira maZimbabweans ese kuti mufambe neshoka, muende kumasenders iwayo kunyange ari kure, muchinopa evidence, muchitaura zvikonzero zvamuri kuramba chiconstitution ichichi. Marambiro acho amuri kuita tiri kuaziva, ndaataura pano. Tiri kuramba tichivhotera president wedu, hatisi kuda election cycle ye more than 5 years, hatisi kuda ma-term limits, tinoda referendum, hatisi kuda kuti madzishe aitwe political, hatisi kuda kuti section 212 inoti masoja adefende nyika ibviswe, hatisi kuda kuti Tobayo Mudede adzoke, hatisi kuda kuti delimitation ibviswe kuZEC, and hatisi kuda kuti process ye-public interviews yemajaji ibviswe. Zviri pachena izvi. So tiri kukumbirisa, we are asking and making an appeal to Zimbabweans to walk to these stations. Vamwe vakaenda kuhondo, so hapana chinoshamisira nekufamba kuti tinopa evidence neungwaru hwedu kusvika vaona takawanda kuti vawedzere mazita iwayaya. So we hope that Parliament will extend the period. We find it ironic, hypocritical, and a conflict of interest that the chief runner for ZANU-PF in defending Constitutional Amendment number 3 of 2026 is the Speaker of Parliament. He has been gallivanting across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe, campaigning for this constitution. Yet he's the one now wearing on another jacket, the jacket of the Speaker of Parliament, who now pretends to sit in Parliament, now allocating and deciding what meetings are held and where. And if you look at carefully, if you study carefully the venues and locations of the centers where evidence is going to be held, it's rigged. You know, places like Gweru don't have a sender. The sender is in Vungu. Most towns don't actually have places of consultations. Places of consultations are put in the rural area where they think they can bust people and intimidate people. We reject such a brazen, arrogant, hubristic, malicious process of trying to rig a consensus in Zimbabwe. This struggle around the constitution will not end or finish on the 31st of March when the processes of public consultations continue. The fact of the matter is that we are building a broad alliance to defend this constitution. The fact of the matter is that the constitutional issue remains permanently entrenched now in Zimbabwean psyche. We refuse to be part of a process that is illegal. And this constitutional amendment number 3 is illegal, and we will prevent it. I'm aware that many citizens are doing everything peacefully to try and prevent this, and we support any process that is constitutional, any process that is peaceful. I'm aware that there will be legal challenges, and there are already legal challenges to this, including one that we have brought together with the National Constitutional Assembly, which will be held on the 1st of April. And our prayer is that the courts must remain autonomous. The law must remain neutral. After all, it is the job and function of the courts to uphold the rule of law and constitutionalism in Zimbabwe. Finally, allow me to thank Zimbabweans and the international community, including my friend Bobby Wine, my friends in the World Liberty Council for their messages of solidarity when Morgan Lube and I were arrested and detained in Mutare under extremely difficult conditions, and we were put in a cell that is not fit to habitate pigs, let alone human beings. And I hope that the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights can take a challenge against the living conditions in that cell, which are clearly in breach of Section 53 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Allow me also to thank the lawyers, the Mutare lawyers, who in their hundreds were in that court representing us. We are aware of the harsh conditions that have been placed against us. For instance, one of the harsh conditions is that I'm not allowed to address any meeting. I'm not allowed to convene any meeting without permission from a police. So the court order actually takes away the rights that I had before I went into prison. So before I went into prison, I could address a funeral, I could address a church wedding. Now I can't. I need police permission, which is absolutely upset. But whatever the meaning and interpretation of this court order, I'm going to give my evidence on the 30th and 31st before the parliamentary committee. So I want to thank Zimbabweans for their solidarity and their words of support during our arrest. I think they did something to us during those prisons. We were swollen and so forth, so I had to undergo toxin tests, and I'm pleased to advise that even though something was injected that caused the shock therapy into my system, I'm okay, and we'll continue fighting, and we'll lead from the front, aluta continua. That the constitutional question is now become a permanent structure and infrastructure of the political landscape of our country. And it's most unfortunate that Mr. Mnangagwa and his lot have actually made something that was not an issue become an issue. The constitution was not an issue. It was not even an election issue. No party campaigned on the basis of making constitutional amendments. But they've stirred public opinion. They've stirred public anger. People out there, and you know this, people out there are angry. People out there are against these constitutional amendments. The fact of the matter is that President Mnangagwa is ill-advised. Those that are advising him don't love him, don't want him, are not interested in his legacy. If they loved him, they would allow him to rest after 2028 because of the many years of service since 1980 that is provided to Zimbabwe. He's an old man in his 80s, so he needs to rest. But obviously, there are Ganandas and cartels and mafias who are financing this thing, who are determined for their own selfish, ulterior motives to see this thing go through. But they're doing it terribly. Even Mugabe, during the 2000 consultations, allowed us to roam freely as the National Constitutional Assembly. We campaigned in the length and breadth of Zimbabwe. And most importantly, Mugabe gave us a referendum in 2000, and we said no, and he listened to us. He didn't bring those amendments. But this time around, there's total closure of space. But if you close a democratic space, then you are making inevitable, unlawful, and unconstitutional methods of expression. And unfortunately, this is the history of our country. Wherever there is closure of space, people take the law into their own hands. The liberation movement was people taking the law into their own hands because the colonial regime refused to dialogue with Africans. Particularly after November 11 of 1965, when Smith imposed the new constitution on Zimbabwe and declared unilaterally independence in Zimbabwe. November 2017 coup was again a result of closure of political space around succession, around democratization. So we again are at another precipitous moment where a closure of political space will have unintended consequences. When senior soldiers like Air Vice Marshal Muchena take the position that he has taken, it must not be dismissed lightly. He is representing an institution. He is speaking for an institution. The position of an Air Vice Marshal is a serious position in any army. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the signs of another implosion. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the signs, the telltale signs of another unlawful precipitous moment in this country. But we don't want blood to be shed in this country, because everyone knows that the implosion next time around will not be seamless like November 2017. It's going to be bloody. So we are asking ZANU-PF and President Mnangagwa to allow for a soft landing for Zimbabwe by simply withdrawing this constitutional bill. If he wanted to use 2030, there are ways and means of achieving it which are peaceful and constitutional, which avoids the calamity and the poison and the toxicity that is Constitutional Amendment number 3 of 2026. And that bill is unpopular in ZANU-PF. It is in fact ultra-virus the resolutions of ZANU-PF itself in October 2024 in Bulawayo, and in October 18 in Mutare. Because resolution of number 1 in Bulawayo simply says the president must govern until 2030. That's all it said. So where are these things around traditional leaders coming from? Where is this toxic thing that the president now has to be elected from parliament coming from? Where is this thing that the gender commission must now go? Where is this thing that ZEC must now be demoted into a little functional? Where are all these things coming from? This is why Zimbabweans are extremely angry. They're angry at the malice of ZANU-PF. They're angry at the cruelty of ZANU-PF. They're angry at the lack of wisdom of ZANU-PF, because they are blindly pushing us into an implosion. And we are tired. This country can't survive on a matrix that every 5 years there's a crisis. Every 5 years there's a crisis. So we are a state in permanent crisis that can enjoy 4 or 5 years of peace, but there's an implosion. And that's why we are underdeveloped. That's why we're underdeveloped, because all these things have got an implication on your GDP. All these things have got an implication on the country's development. So unfortunately, politics is putting a premium on the country's development. If we didn't have toxic politics, things like Gukura Hundi, things like the violence of 2008, things like these unconstitutional amendments, this economy would easily be a $200 billion economy. Now we struggle at around $20-25 billion. Forget about their rigged GDP of $54 billion. It's unfortunate. We're paying a price for 45 years of toxic predatory politics, extractive politics. And it's time to say enough is enough.
Maybe a quick one for me, Honorable Biti. Two quick ones, if I can just show them. There have been many calls. You yourself have also made them. Your colleagues have also made calls of coming together, specifically as different institutions running for the constitutions, for the constitution defense. Are we going to be seeing anything physically transpiring? It looks like we are now almost in the period of the actual national constitution process. Are we going to be seeing anything coming from the main leading voices as far as this process is concerned? The second question will be, since the time you are arrested, we've been seeing many attacks that have been coming in against you and your persona, specifically on the social media, and some of them also allege, and are speaking to your allegiance to Mr. Chabango, who is also said to be one of the reasons why we are here today. What is your response to those two quick issues?
Yeah, firstly, I think that Zimbabweans will come together. I think we are already together on this side of the constitutional debate. And that's good enough. That's good enough. The majority of people are against this, and which is why I thank the church. I thank other like-minded bodies. I thank the unions. I think that conversations are taking place between ourselves, the NCA, DCP, and other parties, the MDC. So I hope that a broad alliance can be formed against this constitutional bill. There is precedent for that. In 2007, with the Save Zimbabwe campaign, which fought for a new constitution and fought for the holding of elections in 2008, after ZANU had declared in Goromonzi at their conference that they will have an election in 2010. So I think a broad alliance will be formed, and it's just a question of time. Just before I came here, I was actually talking to a very key figure. Unfortunately, I can't mention his name, and he knew I was going to speak to the press. And one of the things that he called for, he advised me, was to say, please ask our people to walk to these venues. So people are working together. I think on your second question, people, every moment has got its struggle, and every struggle has got its own moment. In this moment, the struggle is the constitution. The struggle is the constitution. It's the only game in town. So I urge that we should not divide ourselves, and we should focus. Chabangu is one of the reasons why we are here. We have fought him, we have rejected him. I issued a very strong statement in November of 2023. ZANU-PF created Chabangu, and we'll fight anything that ZANU-PF creates. We're consistent. We've been in the trenches for a long time. I myself, as I stand here, have been recalled twice. So I'm against 129, those who believe in Section 129, and those who have used Section 129. I think what is key is for Zimbabweans to understand that we are fighting a complicated fascist dictatorship in the form of ZANU-PF. And anything else that is not ZANU-PF is an unnecessary distraction. So we will remain in the trenches, leading from the front. We will not outsource or delegate this struggle to anyone. We are own liberators. That is why you have seen us without resources, gallivanting across the length and breadth of this country, talking to citizens. I was at the border last week in Mutare, preaching the gospel of constitutional protection, and I hope that this week I'll be able to challenge the restrictive bail conditions around me. But as I'm talking to you right now, members of the CTF are all over the country targeting those 67 centers, trying to ensure that we have representatives and we've got people that will speak out against this satanic bill on the 31st of March 2026. So forward ever, Aluta continue. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.